kukulua. O hilo aina holule hua nale hua makanoe o us. Hao mai kaua kilihune o kanahele. Kuia me ke ala o kamaile o panaewa e kuno mai na vai mo o ailuku. He lua luku e nā kānaka. I kai pala aua e wana i haili kare muki ki o nā manu. Holo noa e wai o lama me ka wailapo. I ho kai me wailo pa i ke kula o hanakahi. A kai kamana o a ke aloha i noho aloha i moku ola. I ola e nā kini e, i ola e nā kini e.
Kaulana mai nei o hilo e a, ka ua kani le hua e a.
Ka ua o mulu ili e a, ka ili o ka malihini e a.
Kaulana mai nei o hilo e a, ka ua kani le hua e a.
Ka ua o mulu ili e a, ka ili o ka malihini e a.
Nani male ho i ka ikena e a, ka nani o wai a ke a e a. Ka vai o lama e a, ma lama lama a vai i e a.
Nani wale ho i ka ikena e a.
Ka nani o wai a ke a e a.
Ka wai o wai o lama e a. Ma lama lama
Vai i e a.
ai ai i o
No i moku ora e a, he moku au i ke kai e a.
E o mulu nei e a,
Ka hune hune kai e a. Ko lana hoi moku ole a, he moku au i ke kai e a.
e ho o mulu ili nei e a, ka hune hune kai e a.
Leana i ka leitani e a.
Ka pua o ka lehua e a.
Haina mai ka puana e a.
No ka ua kani lehua e a. Leana i ka leilani e a. Ka pua o ka lehua e a.
Haina mai ka puana e a, no ka ua tangi le hua e a. No ka ua kangi le hua e a.
No ka ua kani le hua e a.
Hui, ana ai me ke aloha kākou. Good morning, everybody. Good to see everyone this morning. My name is Ku'ulei, and I am part of the Zero Waste Hawaii Island team, along with Ellie and Autumn and Tiff and Ellen and etc. There's so many of us here. Aloha Malu, good to see you this morning. I love it. I love it. I wanted to before we dive in, maybe get a few more folks to share their favorite place in Hilo. I see Jen Kakiwara shared that Pe'epe'e Falls is a favorite place in Hilo, and that's also where my best friend lives. You can see those falls. She lives right, or when you're at the falls, you can see her yard. She lives close to there. Can a couple other folks share? Maybe Malud, can you share a favorite place in Hilo for you?
It's my holiday. I work so much that when I have a little bit time and I can be home. I live in Wainaku, right on Puki High Stream, kind of
Mm.
tucked away. My house looked like a jungle in this very gentrified neighborhood, but I down by the stream and it's all bushy and I like it like that.
Oh, Eola, Eola, we love that. My Uncle Howard, he has plenty jungle like that, and when he was with us, he used to say that that's his security fence, so people cannot see what he's doing in there. But Eola, mahalo for sharing. I wanted to express that Makahanaloa is a place that is so very dear to me. And just through land exchanges over time, it's not been a place that I've been able to see in a long while. And um, Tiff and I both are related familially. And so we both shared that place name today. And that's why I said OMG, because within seconds, we both shared the same place name. Also, Vanessa Lee Miller shares that Maka Ola Nakila is the mouth of the Wailuku River, a historic setting. Oh, Eola. I heard of Kaipalawa, so I wonder if Kaipalawa is just beyond the mouth of the Wailuku River. Eola, I love that, Vanessa Lee. Mahalo for sharing. I see also that Jen has shared, Ellie has shared earlier. Hilo One is Bayfront. So just, it's wonderful and it's important for us to bring in the names of the places that we love in Hilo. These are places that ideally we will um, call in to this conversation, because a lot of the work that we're doing in the system design process is for the betterment of the people of these places and also for the betterment of the places themselves, as we work to reduce Opala and Pu'uana, Pu'uana Hulu, and also as we really look at the root of the cause of this issue that is our issue with Opala and waste. So I'm very excited to kind of dig into some of the values. I think we went over just a couple last week, and we have just a couple more this week to share a little bit in depth. But before I do that, I would like to offer this Oli to our space. And this Oli was written for my Ohana through my Kua, about Makahanaloa and about our relationship to that place. And this Oli is special to our Ohana Keiki, so I'm happy to share that with you in this space. I'm grateful to the Kuek Kaolioli Kumu for putting this Oli together, to Auntie Kekuhi and Taupori Tangaroma for their aloha for our Ohana in composing this chant. Kukuilawani au ihilo kuau nana ya makahana loa. Kilo hana na keiki na hana kai o olulu I ka malululu o aia ke ae. Oh yeah. Mahalo kako. Without further ado, I'd like to get into this mural and do some cultural grounding before I hand it back to Autumn and Ellie. I'm gonna share my screen here. Is anyone here? Anybody ever saw the movie Matilda? Matilda with the red ribbon. It's a really old, it's an old show, but there's a part in there that says, "Who was wearing a pretty red ribbon yesterday that isn't wearing one today?" And it's like from this classroom piece. But anyway, who is here today that wasn't here the last time we met? Is anyone new to this space? Malu and Julia, maybe. Okay, Malu, can you introduce yourself and share a little bit about your experience with our work? I know that we've met you before, but if you can go ahead. Oh wait, are you muted?
Oh, here I go. Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Let's see. Born Oahu, been here from 74. I own Abundant Life Natural Foods for the last 47 years. It's wonderful to be with a group that, one can't do it alone. So this is awesome what you guys are doing. Very appreciative. Mahalo.
Mahalo for being in this space. So grateful. I would like Julia to introduce yourself, but I also know that Jen Kagiwara, did you unmute yourself earlier? Did you
I'm sorry I missed last week. I was traveling for work, but
Oh no, you're a familiar face in this
Okay.
space.
Yeah.
Also, Julia, have you been in this space before? Maybe not last week or
So I am here with Perpetual. I haven't been in this specific space, but I'm very excited to be here. I'm working with Perpetual on an effort focused on the EPA's Climate Pollution Reduction Grant Program. And we're working with some coalitions of cities to write grants for reuse programs. So I'm here to kind of learn about Perpetual's process and here learn about the city system design process and hopefully apply that to other
cool.
places.
Very cool. Welcome. It's beautiful to welcome you into this space. I love to see other Perpetual folks. And shout out to all of the people behind the scenes who have been helping us with the mural and helping us from one city to another to really get this work done in a good way. Awesome. Good to meet you folks and excited to hear your mana'o as we move forward. Okay, so this is a mural. Can everyone unmute yourself and say mural?
Miro.
Hero.
Does that have a meaning in the Hawaiian language? Miro?
No, but milo is a type of tree and a type of wood. So maybe we'll go with that. Our milo board, though. But I imagine that this is meant to kind of lean into the topic or the concept of a mural, like a mural of art, but maybe a mural of information. But I'm so thankful for this application and for Perpetual's introduction of this application to me. We've been working very closely. Wait, can you see my screen, my mural? Okay, great. We've been working really closely with this part of the mural. It looks really small from far away, but it's actually, you can zoom in and add sticky notes and all types of things to this kind of program called the mural. But I'm thankful to spend a little bit of time before we get into the system design process to go over some of the big picture aspect of Zero Waste Hawaii Island and some of the work that we're doing in general outside of this reusable foodware system. These values are really, really important because the way that I myself and Tiff have been engaging with Ohana and with communities and with other businesses as well involves not just this system independently and not just this system in an isolated way, but addressing all of these other really important issues with our community and with our families that come along with, that are related to the the implementation of this system. So I just wanted to take a moment to share Zero Waste Hawaii Island's values. The reusable foodware system and our collaborations with Hawaii County are related to one of our values, which is this Aupuni value here, which is related to civic duty and governance. But there are 5 other values here. So we talked about Kanaka and individual wellness and Aina and environmental accountability last week. I wonder if we also went over Akua, but just as a briefing, the ability for a family or a person to adopt or adapt zero waste principles sometimes requires some level of individual health. It requires our ability to recognize that we want better for our environment and that we want better for ourselves. And even that, it requires some level of wellness. And so here there's a list of resources for folks who have not attained this. If you look at this colorful triangle down here, this is Maslow's hierarchy of needs. I don't know why this is like this. Okay, and then it went really small, but that's okay. Maslow's hierarchy of needs expresses that sometimes these foundational principles are necessary in order to build up to this self-actualization piece. And so as an OEV person and as a culture bearer in my community, I recognize that if our work is to help people to desire to become more culturally, more environmentally conscious, we also must concern ourselves with the lower tiers of this triangle. So we need to make sure that the work that we're doing is accessible and available and friendly and kind to folks who do not have yet established their physiological needs like water and food and shelter and sleep and clothing. Our work has to be also accessible to them in some way, and we need to concern ourselves with that. So anyway, this is just a review. I didn't mean to dive so deeply into these, but so Kanaka is the person's individual wellness. That is important to me and to us as an organization. Aina, environmental accountability. This is one of Zero Waste Hawaii Island's other values that has to do with place-based, like aloha for place. And so this is a photo of Pu'uanahulu. This is Pu'uva'ava'a, and I think Pu'uanahulu, the Ahupua'a, is more specifically to the left. And then to the right here is Hualalai. And here, where we see this truck here, this truck is quite literally dumping all of the trash that it collected into this Aina here. And it's not gonna go away for another 1,000 years or so. Don't quote me on that. I don't actually know how truthful that is scientifically. But here we are, understanding that it is our aloha for Pu'uanahulu and for this place and our own place that should inform our behaviors when it comes to our waste. And so this is another one of our values. Outside of our aloha for actual place, there's this value that is akua that has to do with interconnectedness. Some people use the word God, but interconnectedness is also an appropriate concept when we're looking at this version of this law of akua. This is related to the spiritual connection we might have to food and soil and nature and forest systems. So it is our aloha for akua and for not just the place, but all of the details in the place, from the largest, biggest moon and sun to the smallest microbe in the soil. And so it is our aloha for these things that is also related to our project and to our program. They cannot be and live separately. We have to, as an organization, it's important for me as a cultural advisor to share how these things come together. Our concern for this environment is related to our concern for all of these other values. So it's something that's been important. These are all lists of resources. informational and educational resources for us to tap into these kinds of values. And they seem far and maybe unrelated to the work that we're doing, but in a way, they're related. So that's Akua, and this is Ohana. So here you can see this tarot Manaulu, which has well, not this particular tarot, but this variety of tarot has informed the design of our logo. And so this is important because these two huli started as one. And so the Manaulu, when it grows, the leaves are kind of like entwined in this way, and then they grow apart. But this variety of taro can grow apart into two different huli. And when you have two different huli, you can cut at this kohina here, like you can cut where the brown line meets the white line. You can cut the taro off there, and you now have two starters instead of one. And so this picture models the way that when one person in one family concerns themselves with not just zero waste principles, but aloha aina and general, truthful, genuine aloha for their land, sometimes that inspires another person to be very concerned with their aina, with our aina. And then they grow, and then they're planted, and then more families get involved. And so this family component is really significant. And here you can see my family. This is my youngest sister, and she's to the left. She's 10 yesterday. It was her birthday. We're celebrating her birthday. But anyway, these are all of the systems of my family. And so all of these things are related, especially when it comes to the buy-in, like individuals being able to buy in to environmentalism, because there's been a gap in Hawaii, between Hawaiian and local culture and the culture of zero waste. So all of these values are important to consider as we go. Last, we have this Kaiaulu, last before Aupuni, we have this Kaiaulu value, which is the general community. This concept might suggest that when we are asked anything as folks who are concerned with our community and related to our community, that we defer to our community. When someone asks me what I think is best for my community, it's important that I invite my community in to make some of those decisions. So that's what we've done. We've done a few presentations with some of our family and friends, which is below, the photo below. And then we've done some work with the Panaewa Neighborhood Watch. We're also present in spaces of community with Lele'iwi Community Association. I was able to visit Keaukaha Community Association yesterday. So all of this engagement is important to the work. And this is happening outside of our system design team meetings in other spaces of our world in Hilo. And so this is just a bit to ground into the larger picture of our aloha for our aina, for our aloha for this place that is Pu'uanahulu, and for our aloha for each other. And so let's carry these intentions of aloha as we move forward in discussing our reusable foodware project today. I'm just very grateful for the opportunity to be here to help us ground into those foundational pieces before we move forward. Does anybody have any thoughts or questions? I would like to hear somebody's thoughts or questions before we move on. Maybe just one person.
O'ole lahanau to your little sister.
Hey, hola, mahalo. Mahalo. Malu, are you going to share something?
Oh, just that so beautiful. I love how you set this up. Beautiful.
Mahalo. I'm very much supported by the Miro team overseas, who has been working tirelessly to ensure that this is done. So Andy, folks, just thank you so much. And I think we're okay to hand it on over to Autumn and or Ellie to take it from here when it comes to our reusable foodware program. Mahalo, everyone.
Thank you, Kule, for getting us off to a wonderful start. I'm really excited about our agenda today. we have quite a few, well, we have several topics we want to cover, but I think we will start with the one that I am personally most excited about, and it's one that's come up a lot in the calls so far, or the previous conversations we've had as a group, and that is we have a draft map of where return bin locations could be placed, and we want to get feedback on that. So if we could start in the Miro, I want to explain sort of where the map came from, and then we'll share the map and actually go through and get feedback on which points appear aligned with what folks think would work well, where there might be gaps, and just get some feedback on that. So Andy, are you able to share the Miro and take us to the return bin locations section, please? Awesome. So last week, we introduced the general idea of return bin locations. And on this page, you can see these kind of very blue colored photos under the community outreach section. So when we did our in-person public workshops back in October, one of the things that we asked people to do is place pins on printouts of a map. And this is a recreation of how those pins looked in these photos and where folks had placed pins. So that was one input that we had into our mapping process. And then over to the right, and this is something that we invited all of you to do last week as well, we used a tool called Padlet to ask this group and your friends and neighbors and anyone else that you thought should have some input to place pins through Padlet on a digital map. That was another input to the draft map of locations. And then if you scroll down, Andy, I think we have a section that describes the DSI. Okay, here we go. So we have a wonderful academic partner. The Data Science Institute is a program at the University of Chicago. And we are very fortunate in that one of our funders, called the 11th Hour Project, also funds unlimited access for their grantees to use the resources and the teams at the Data Science Institute to support the work that they're doing. So this work has been done actually by a group of data science students, but supported by a data science mentor. So someone who's a full-time staff person and an expert in data science who works with the students to create these different maps. So what they have done is, and we'll open the actual map in a second. So if you can't read this map, don't worry, that we'll have a much bigger version of it very shortly. So we'll go into the map and you'll see that they have used a set of algorithm rules that we provided them to place additional automated points. And we might scroll even just a little bit more on that location type chart, Andy, just so people can make sure to read it. So they've placed 162 points in addition to the pins that were already there. And they've placed them based on the idea that we really want coverage of certain types of establishments. So we know that we want return bins at foodware using establishments. The rule that we had here was they just picked 25% at random. So you'll see 25% of restaurants and places using foodware have pins. We have an opportunity now as a group to adjust which 25% we think that should be, but ultimately it will rely on which restaurants sign up for the program and decide to participate, so that anywhere that you could get a reusable item, you can also return one. So this just shows representatively what 25% of restaurants having bins could look like in terms of the spread of items of return bins across town. We've included return bins at all big box grocery and pharmacy locations. We've included return bins at every school, one office space hub, hotels with over 90 rooms, multifamily homes and apartment buildings. They've identified 7 that was sort of came through Google Maps and Yelp. One thing that I should be sure to say is that all of this is based on data that they have scraped from Google Maps and Yelp, which we know is not perfect. So this is why humans are so important to automated and data science processes. Is I am absolutely sure that there will be opportunities for this group to say, that place doesn't actually exist. So it might be just a figment of Google Maps' imagination, and this is a great opportunity for us to take it off. Or you might say, oh, that place closed 5 years ago, or what about this place? So this is exactly why we do this. And I want to make sure we have a discussion here, but this can also be over the next week, we can continue accepting feedback and corrections and all of that on this map. So redemption sites and public parks and spaces are all places that we anticipate would be good places to have reusable foodware collection bins. Councilwoman Kajiwada, I saw you just put a comment in the chat around the colors. So when you go into the real map, it's going to look a little bit different than the screenshot here. And Andy, yeah, you want to just take us into the map and we can see. So that little key was for the icons. So the orange colors are the data science points that have been selected based on everything I just talked about, all those different categories, and they have little icons to indicate which type of point they are. So the knife and fork is a restaurant. The chasing arrows is like a redemption center or recycling center. The graduation cap is school. So hopefully they're pretty intuitive the way that they've been selected. The red and blue points are the points that were mapped by community members, either in person or through Padlet. And at this moment, I don't remember which is which, but they're basically equivalent in terms of where they came from, which is different, community input on mapping. So one thing that I think is really interesting is just to see where we already have strong co-location of red and blue points with orange points. And in some cases, we don't have that co-location, but this is our chance to say, oh, we really should have that. So this is just a way to kind of look at the data sources that we have so far, and that we consider that sort of draft one. Any questions about what we're looking at? And I know it's, maybe hard to follow along on Andy's screen, but the map link should be easily available too if you want to go in and take a look at it on your own and scroll around. The automated points so far have been limited to Hilo because that was what we asked them to do. We didn't ask them to optimize across a larger boundary. We asked them to look specifically at the boundaries of Hilo and then maximize the placement of points within Hilo's boundaries. Community members did place points outside of Hilo, and that is something that we are certainly supportive of. One of the things that we can do with this as we get more and more input on the data is the next step for the DSI team is to do some routing testing. So one of the things that they can do is they can say, okay, if this is where your 175 points are, then it would take X number of trucks or bikes, X number of hours to visit every single point. And they can actually do some comparative testing or scenario testing to say, if we had been in Volcano, for example, this is what that means for system cost, system environmental impact, and here's what it could mean for volume collection. They can't predict the future or human behavior, but they can tell us about mileage and gas usage, or if it's an EV, then EV usage, things like that. So that's part of one of the next steps here would be doing some testing to see what is the most, how far afield can the initial catchment area be before it starts to undermine the ability of the system to support itself before we're ready to expand more broadly. So hopefully that makes sense so far. But before we go into what I would love to do on this call is actually get some feedback from this group, and we can kind of point to, across the map in sections, but I'm really interested to have this group highlight places where something seems to be incorrectly placed and should be moved or removed, or places where you really think it's important that there should be a collection opportunity there and it just has been missed completely. So before we jump into that more granular exercise, any questions at this level? I'm hearing nothing. Okay. Oh, and thanks, Andy, for getting some of the details in the chat.
And Jennifer did mention already the post offices, so we can look at those to make sure.
Oh, good. I don't know that we did include the post offices yet, so that's a great point. And so Autumn has the data file open, which has every single data point listed and lines, so she can add new lines as we say things for, we need the post offices. So Autumn, I think go ahead and add a note around the post offices in the data file so we can have the data science team add those. And yeah, if you're in the map, you can hover over or click on the points and see exactly what they are. So you can see, oh, look, that's the CVS pharmacy, or, oh, this is what school that is. You'll notice, let's see. Hannah, I see your comment. So we have not yet included locations in Kona, but this is our chance to hear from you where in Kona you think those locations could be, because I think that would be really important for us to assess the viability of. So Hannah, either in the chat or if you want to unmute and say, if we were going to place a few locations in Kona, where would you want those to be? Where do you think would be best?
I think I want to reach out to some of my friends that live on Kona side because I wouldn't know, but I will.
Fabulous. Please do. Yeah, please provide some feedback on what could work there.
Excuse me, what are the little footprint? What are those? What does that mean?
But I think they're parks probably.
Okay. I don't know what this one says. It's a school that's right there at Kalwana and Wainui Avenue. There's this, I don't
Oh yeah,
think-
the little footprint there. Yeah, just
Yeah,
maybe
but the
right-
little school thing above it, I don't know what school that is.
Yeah.
Oh, Punana, it's not, is that exactly where it is? I thought it was, I thought Punana was a different spot. I'll
these
look
are-
at that.
Please tell us what is wrong. I mean, that's, you know, you need people on the ground to say, this isn't actually here.
Okay.
One of the things
And-
that is tricky with the algorithm is how to address public spaces, because Google Maps and Yelp don't provide great data about exactly what a public space is. So these parks,
Right.
this is like a first stab. But yeah, we'd love your sense of,
Yeah.
oh, that park isn't really a foot traffic park, whereas this other
Right.
park is a big foot traffic park.
Right, like yeah, Carvalho Park is a great place to put it. Don't have one there, but I don't know where that footprint is in the middle of a neighborhood. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe it's in the wrong place and it should have been there, or maybe it because we did, like, the algorithm was supposed to put a bin at every park. So if that was missed, it may be that the data from Google Maps on that park is not great.
Okay.
I
Ellie-
think probably, oh, sorry.
Yes, Andy?
Sorry, Cooley, I'll just go really quick. Is there anything that you want me to be capturing here, or Autumn, are you able to capture some of the feedback we're getting from folks on the line?
Yes, I'm capturing it in the CSV file, so we're all good. Thanks, Andy.
Great. Yeah, thanks. Sorry, Cooley.
I just
No.
are the dots are not like they're like this general area. They're not like it's gonna be here. Yeah.
I think that's fair, because the dots are based on where people dropped pins, either digitally or physically. So I think those would be, to me, it would be really helpful to understand if the dots are places, so when we see here where there's dots that we don't have an orange marker, are those places we should have an orange marker or not? Because it looks like there's quite a few red and blue dots that don't have an orange marker next to them. So if folks could call out the places where, like, there's a red dot over here that's quite kind of far afield. Yeah, that one north of the river. Did someone put that like at their house? You know, I'm not sure what that was meant to be. So
A lot of those seem pretty odd to me, kind of like in neighborhoods. But maybe it was
Mhm.
just like hard to tell exactly where people were sticking a dot, you know?
it's
On-
imperfect. Yeah, I think in particular, like, I know the Padlet data points were very easy because they were already digital to put on the map, but the data science team had to use like a photo to digital for the pins. So there may be a little bit of data entry error in translating some of those over.
I'm just looking at like Hilo Medical Center, for example, like, you know, there's a foot there. And I think like, yeah, we definitely want one at Hilo Medical Center, but is that like the spot near the medical center where we want the,
Yeah.
so I just like, they're not exact at this point. It's just like in this general area, but then when we actually put the bin, we'll decide like, oh, we'll put it by the bus stop or we'll put it by the emergency room.
I think
turnaround.
what I would suggest is that places where we know that, like, the medical center needs a dot, we should be specific that the medical center needs a dot. It looks like the foot here thinks that it is at Wailuku River State Park, which clearly it does not appear to be at Wailuku River State Park. So I think that's a good note for us to make, that footprint and landed in the wrong place. From what it looks like to me, please redirect as needed. And it looks like we need to add a collection bin at the Hilo Medical Center. And perhaps that red dot there was meant to be the medical center, but we can just make a note that we need one there, one way or another. So
You know what? You could check on that random dot. It looks like it's a farther up from where OK Farms and Troy's
is that what it
Olsen
could be?
farm is. Because I know there's other farms that do tours. They're up there, so it might be something.
Awesome. Thank you for helping us interpret that, because that sounds important, but I definitely would not have understood that without you sharing that. So
But
that's
that
great.
isn't OK Farms because it would be closer to the other side of the river by the falls. But I know
Mhm.
further, you know, Mauka of where they're located, they do farm tours.
Mm. Very good to
I
know.
don't know, that would only make, that's the only thing that makes sense to me.
Yeah, I
Troy,
think
thank you for your comment. Yeah. Sorry, Kule?
no, no worries. I just wanted to interject quickly to just say that like aha punanaleo or like punanaleo where it said that I'm sure Jen Kagewara knows this, but that's just for our understanding. That's the administrative office of the school, most likely. So it's not an actual school, it's like an office. So it's like just this kind of information that
Mhm.
helps us to be more aware. But in this kind of like kipuka of places, there's Pu'uhonu Place, which is a doctor's facility, which would be a good place to have it. It's close enough to Punanaleo, but it's closer to the big office where all the doctors are. So like just those types of kind of things.
Yeah,
But
there's
I'm
also
saying
the
that
credit
because I see
union.
That's
in
over,
yeah,
do you mean over on Komohana Street over there?
yeah,
Yeah.
off of
Where,
Pu'uhonu.
yeah, on Komohana.
Yeah, off of Komohana, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, is that not where the dot is?
There is.
I don't even see it anymore. I don't know which one was Punanaleo. But I think there's like a school cap there when
Yeah.
it's not the
There's one
administration.
that's right below Carvalho Park. That graduation cap is the Punanaleo.
Oh yeah. So
Yeah.
so that's
So
how to
that's
me it's not really a school, it's the
No,
office for the
that's
school.
not where their school is. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
really
Yeah.
helpful. So we would want to move that to be at only at schools and not at administrative offices. That's perfect.
And then I see that TC raised his hand. Sorry. And this is
Yeah,
great
sorry,
discussion.
TC, you've had it raised for a while,
Okay.
but we've got a lot.
I
Over to you,
just,
TC.
yeah, I just wanted to clarify that the specific location that any of these bins get put at, I think it is helpful for everybody to keep in mind. It's going to have to be a negotiation with that particular property owner or business or whatever is located there, whether it's county, private, or some other entity, to maximize the traffic, but also not impede their other business functions. So any discussion about the specific location, I think people should put off, just keeping in mind, yes, we want to try and maximize it because it's going to be where it's individually negotiated for each location. When it gets down to this, either the service provider or somebody within the county or this group to help negotiate that. So don't get wrapped up into those weeds just yet, is my advice.
I appreciate that, TC. I think you're absolutely right. This is our ideal map of where we think things would be, and it's kind of a starting point for where we think an optimized collection network could be. But the reality will absolutely depend on who owns the property and who gets to say what goes there or not. So very, very good. I should have said that sooner. So thank you for getting that into the conversation. I see we have lots of good points in the chat, and so thank you for that. All comments in the chat will be recorded and heard. So even if we don't say them out loud, we'll definitely make sure that they become attached to the feedback with the map. Ellen, I see you raised your hand, but just while I'm going through the chat, I want to kind of address these and then we can come to you. So I do see, Ellen, you had commented on tour bus companies, which I think is a great idea. I don't think we have those yet. And then mail drop boxes. If you could provide some more detail on kind of what exactly we would look for on the map for those, that would be super helpful. Troy, thank you for calling out the relative location of OK Farms and that one dot. I'm interested if you think that OK Farms would want to have a collection point there or not. Or, you know, if there's an area around OK Farms that you think would be useful to consider as a collection point.
That wasn't Troy. That was me. That I just listed on the map.
There's a comment in the chat that I think is from Troy, unless
okay.
you've hacked Zoom and you're able to speak as Troy.
Kalamai.
That is a residential, that's a house. So I don't know. We'd be open to having a collection bin, you know, especially if we were using, you know, reusable products. We don't get a lot of traffic up to the farm, but I mean, overall, it seems like a lot of dots to me. And I think my initial response to the whole layout would be less is more. And there's an awful lot of collection bins there. And maybe we don't need that many, especially to start. Just my thought on it.
Thank you, Troy. I don't know, Dagny, if you want to comment on less is more or more is more when it comes to dots and dot placement.
Well, I think there's been valuable comments made by, TC and others about, this is our starting. This would be making sure that we had an ideal location from a life cycle assessment and ease of use, et cetera. I think we will continue to narrow down for many different reasons. I will add that I think what we have to come to terms with is that we are competing against a system that has been designed for convenience, and that's the single-use disposable system. And it's supported by all the infrastructure that we all pay through our taxes or businesses provide, which is trash cans and trash receptacles, which tend to be fairly ubiquitously available. One of the theories of change around this work in our experience is that mimicking that ease of use to the best that we're reasonably able is what really allows for a flipping point in the user adoption and the ease of use and the returns and the quick turnaround of those returns to keep the system really viable, just based on how many people are using it, their excitement to use it, the ease to use it, but as well as how efficient the system can be in getting containers back so they can go back out the door again. So like everything, I think it's a balancing act, and many different will come into play. But I think if we're looking at our best imagination and best guess at what makes it really vibrant, we would try to mimic what the community has available for single use.
Thank you, Dagny, for speaking to that. I think, Troy, we welcome your continued feedback on that point as the map gets refined. Ellen, let's go to you next, and then I'll come back and do the rest of the chats.
Thank you. Regarding the tour bus companies, I had sent some of you folks an email about an idea that was somewhere, and I can't track it down, can't find it yet. But what the tour companies did is anytime they had their visitors coming on board, they were each given a reusable container, and they used that for the day, and then they dropped it off with the tour company. So it would be a matter of having the bus itself or the van collecting the items. That's why I was saying the major tour company headquarters, I guess. So thank you.
Thank you,
Cool
Ellen.
idea.
Yeah. Great. So going back to our chat, Jennifer, you asked, did we include bus stops? Not yet. And I actually think this would be a great follow-up is, I don't know, to Troy's point, we're trying to balance between the right number. I don't know that we can, I don't know yet if we could put a bin at every bus stop. So it'd be interesting to get some feedback on, are there certain bus stops that are more heavily populated or trafficked than others? So it'd be really interesting to say, like, if you could put 10 at bus stops, which bus stops would be the best ones to put it at given traffic and usage? I don't know if that's something that you have a perspective on, or if others would want to contribute to that, or maybe there's even data on bus ridership that we could get.
I don't think it'd be necessary at all of them.
Mm-hmm.
I've ridden the bus fair amount, but from one side of the island to the other, not as much in Hilo. Some bus stops on the island have garbage can, and they're usually pretty full. And then a lot of them in Hilo just don't have garbage cans. So it's hard to gauge if this is the place where people want to put their rubbish or not. So I feel like for all of us, I would think when we actually get to the point of really deciding where we're going to place things, we probably need to do a bit of like ground truthing and additional data gathering to see like, is this really the place that is worth putting a bin? And I'm sure we'll adjust things over time too, right? Like, oh, no, this bin never has anything. Let's just move it, to this other spot.
Yes.
So
Great. Thank you. Yeah, I'd be interesting. I'd love to talk further about how we could ground truth the trash at bus stations. That'll be good research to do. The next comment I see in the chat was from Malu about refining the location of the point that was on her business site. And insights on traffic flow and parking is going to be really helpful. So really appreciate that comment. We can definitely adjust the position of that bin, and the Mohel bus terminal, I think is a great suggestion as well, sort of piggybacking on what Jen said. Jennifer, you mentioned problems with state parks. Can you say more about what you mean just in terms of getting approval for a bin in a state park or something else?
well, because they're state workers, I'm not sure, but I think it's state workers that deal with the rubbish in those locations, which we run into issues with union. So we had that conversation with Auntie Baba, who works at the port. So it's not like we're dealing with the county in terms of permissions, we're dealing with the state. Maybe it won't be an issue, but it might be. I think it's better to anticipate that it might be and start conversations to see about feasibility.
Yeah, it's a good call out. I think we would still desire to have a bin there, but maybe there's a different servicing plan for it. For example, maybe the county worker or the state workers, are paid to service those bins. I mean, we can figure out some way of making sure that we could find support if that's the issue, or we can better understand. And thank you for calling out the port. I think it may not be noted on this map yet, but we should absolutely make a point about having some form of collection that captures cruise participants heading back to their ships, whether it's right at the port or on sort of a pathway to the port, is going to be a really, I think, important thing to capture. Autumn, I'm feeling better about the fact that this is being recorded. I'm sure you can't quite write this fast, but hopefully we can refer to the recording to make sure everything gets captured. Molly, thank you for your comment on the airport. I think that's an essential one, so thank you for flagging that. Jennifer, your point around high tide. So this is something that we've run into in other places, as well as needing to think about what are the requirements for certain bins that are needing to be on beaches or in parks that might have a vulnerability to different kinds of weather elements or storm surge and things like that. So yes, I think that's a strong yes, that needs to be a consideration in the placement of bins and in what kind of bins get placed and how they're secured. We've even heard that, certain locations in Galveston would need a wind certification, for example. So we know that could be a reality in Hilo as well. Councilman Kajiwara, your offer to get a map of the new trash receptacles is wonderful. And I would absolutely love to get that data. We have that for some of our other cities, but we don't have that yet for Hilo. So if you're able to help us with that, that would be wonderful. Thank you. Hannah, I see Tiff had a response to your comment. Let's see. Mauna Kea Park, and wondering how feasible having bins outside of Hilo will be. So that's a great call out. We don't know yet. I think we would like to hear if there could be bins outside of Hilo, where should they be? And then that's a point of analysis for the DSI team. They're able to go and sort of do some of the math on that and see what's manageable or not manageable. So it's really helpful to know what we think would be best, and then we can come back with some more data on what's reasonable and sort of how things might be phased over time. You might not start with all these points, but we might expand into them over time. Oh, and Councilman Kajiwara, getting some details on busiest bus stops would be also amazing. Thank you for your help on important data. And then Tiff, I see your last comment here on Mauna Kea Park, which I think, yes, you mentioned in the other one as well. So that's noted. Thank you.
Yeah,
and
just noted. And then just sorry to interrupt.
No, go ahead, please.
Yeah, that location, concerning having something out there would maybe address the concern of having the items come out of Hilo. There's a lot of people that stop at the park. And I know there's a lot of tour companies that stop there to acclimate their passengers, both from the Hilo, from the Kona side particularly. And but when they do go up, there's two tour companies that come from both the Hilo and the Kona side to the Mauna, which is like the midpoint of our island. And there are a lot that stop at, they have to stop at the visitor center up there And there's also a lot of tourists that go up there. So, and I know Opala is an issue on the Mauna. So that might be something to consider, having that partnership. And I believe the University of Hawaii is responsible for that area.
That's great.
Yeah.
Your comment and also Kule's comment following on, I think are both really good reminders that it's possible that we could place bins in places that could be serviced through partnerships. So whether, I think to Kule's point, if it's a business that has operations in both Hilo and Kona, that could be a way to facilitate the transport of bins without having a dedicated reuse vehicle going back and forth. I do wonder, you know, sort of to Ellen's point, as well as to yours here, Tiff, like, could tour service operators who maybe have extra space in the back of their bus, or, you know, could that be an opportunity to transport things where it's something they would have been driving that route anyway? Maybe they just, you know, are able to pick things up along the way. Dagny, looks like you wanted to say something.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I really Helion off again. I think that we should, you know, given the larger geography of Hilo, I think that there are some really good opportunities potentially to piggyback some of these routes with people who are already traveling them, and it would be a low, easy lift to coordinate. So let's put that on the table.
Thank you. All right, Jennifer notes the library, which we'll make sure that we have that if we don't already. I'm not sure at this moment if it's there, but we'll definitely make sure that we get a bin there. And then TC, I think your point there and your concern is exactly kind of the purpose of doing this exercise, is to say, if we were to set this up in this way with this many bins in these locations, what does that mean for the economics of collection? What does that mean for the timing of that? What would it take to make that happen? And then that allows us to be really data-driven in the design, you know, the design decision about what actually happens. So it's helpful for us to understand from a community perspective, you know, where these would be most useful, most well-placed, most trafficked, and then aligning that with the operational reality is exactly what we're going to be working on. So very good. Well, I think we've gotten some wonderful feedback already. I would encourage, and we'll share the link to this map in the sort of follow-up email to this meeting, if folks have a chance to take a look and just send back any additional comments on, oh, it looks like you missed the, you know, this place, you know, or I'm not sure we need one here. Like, that's just really helpful for us to get that feedback. So please continue to send that feedback in, and we'll aim to have a revised map for our next meeting. And maybe that's a surprise, because in theory, and for our original schedule, this was our last meeting, but we're not quite done. So we're proposing an additional meeting, not next week, because we want to get more time to finish the data collection that's happening and to finish the revisions to this map and some other elements, but we'll come back a week, 2 weeks from today, basically. So a week from next week, we'll take a week off and then we'll be back together. We hope that all of you can continue with us for one more week, and that'll be sort of our wrap up week to get everything pulled together and then get ready to go into the next round of draft review. So any last comments on the map at this moment? Knowing that this is not the end, but anything else you just want to say before we move on to the next topic? This is one of the things for me, and this is, I think, what some of you were reacting to as well, that makes this feel very real, where you can sort of picture like, oh, what would it be like for Hilo to have a fabulous looking return bin in all of these locations? It would feel, I'm sure, in some ways really different from what it feels like today. And you know, what would make that feel really good and feel really exciting and feel, you know, modern and clean? And, you know, what are things that we want to be careful about? You know, how do we make sure that it doesn't bring negative impacts or have negative feelings or things like that? So that's exactly kind of the point of going through this process. All right. Ellen, go ahead.
Before we move on, I know this is going to happen, I'm sure, but the key languages that we want to have the information, you know, what do you call, translated into. We want to make sure that we have all of that on the bins. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes. Yes, yes, and yes. Excellent. Okay, well, Andy, I think we can go back to the Miro. Thank you. And if we want to zoom out, We had a couple other topics that were on our list today that I think it's worth talking through. And Dagny, I think maybe you and I can tag team these if you're game for that. The 5 topics, and I think we can just spend a couple minutes on each because these are things that are open for feedback, but that don't present an immediate decision point on this call today. So it's really more of a kind of an overview and a sort of how we think about it and what does this look like. And then we can hear comments and thoughts. So the 5 topics are governance, surge events, yes, washing, logistics, and labor. So Dagny, which of those are you most inspired to speak to first? Anything? Okay.
You've had to do the majority of talking, so you can just pick for me. I'm your pinch hitter here. So you just say go and I'll speak about any of them as you like.
Why don't you start with washing?
Sure. So washing. I'm gonna try and get there we go. I knew there was part of the board was on washing. Scroll over there. So I think that this group, for the most part, many of us have discussed washing quite a bit, and in particular, the different kinds of washing, especially as it pertained to our container selection, et cetera, whether we'd be able to accommodate some of the beverages that are currently being packaged. So we have come to that conclusion that certain washing machines can accommodate jars, and other washing machines are used to accommodate the long neck washing. We have discussed internally, I think a bit as the broader Hilo group, the need to identify a location. Obviously, this group is in an amazing position because we have funding from the grants to set up the infrastructure for washing. It's an enormous blessing to have that funding. It's not funding that other cities have. So the ability to really set up a washing facility that accommodates the needs and the future needs that the community sees themselves having for this washing machine is really a blessing. It allows us to design and optimize for a reusable system specifically. In the foodware categories we're thinking of starting in, along with those locally packaged goods, and potentially down the road as we go, additional types of container types, whether that's consumer product goods that are from the grocery, or whether those are, the pre-packaged foodware and grocery as well, that's hot, that could theoretically enter the system very soon. So in terms of volumes and efficiency, conveyor washing machines are what are best practice. We would look to accommodate those machines in such a way that you could have digital tracking that happened while assets moved across your washing line. And you could have ample space and room to then sort packaging efficiently and easily as it came off the line, dry, as well as store it. So I think that our considerations additionally that we've found are really important, and I think people have been doing a great job of keeping in mind as they think of potential buildings that are already in Hilo that we might think about transitioning into the washing facility, are things like vehicle assets or vehicle access. We're going to need to have specific types of electricity and plumbing. And the really fun part about the washing, I think, is that this is the place where there's such a great opportunity to have local jobs created and a variety of positions in this space. And so I think that this is a really exciting part of the washing side that not everybody thinks about, is the social aspect and the type of jobs that come up and are on offer. And often they can range from low skill jobs to management jobs. and lots of creative opportunities for folks like previously incarcerated or others in the community that can really use these entry-level jobs that are safe and upwardly mobile. So I'll pause on washing there. This was the broad scope overview, and let's dive in to see if there are specifics. I see.
Yeah. The comments so far aren't
Notes.
specific to washing. I think this is an area where ultimately it's sort of a technical capabilities question as opposed to really a community, assuming as long as the washing facility is built responsibly and, you know, to code and all of those things, there shouldn't be much of an impact on the community. But this is our chance to understand maybe there's things that would be important that we haven't understood yet or captured yet. So that's why there isn't really a decision here per se, but it really is a chance for us to share kind of what we understand about how washing will get set up, and then to make sure there's nothing that we're failing to understand or just missing at this point. Ellen, I see you've raised your hand.
Yes. So I just want to be clear. So we are discussing washing for the open system. Now, for any closed loop systems such as a school or the university or college, HTC, would they be kind of on their own for setting up something not quite that large? In other words, getting a commercial dishwasher in place that's running and used. Is that what we're looking at to give advice on?
I think that it's a wonderful question, and I think that, you know, the case could be made that washing right where it's used is the most environmentally sound thing to do. And then there can be cases in which there are facilities that maybe for all intents purposes, like a university or in the schools, they're closed loop, but they simply don't have washing facilities nor the capacity or interest to build those and then staff those and manage those facilities. So I think this is something that we should consider on a case-by-case basis, really, in terms of those larger institutions that are closed loop, whether it makes sense for those containers from that facility or location to come to the centralized washing facility, or if it makes sense for them to wash on site. Either can be accommodated.
Thank you. Thanks, Dagny. I appreciate that.
Jennifer noted in the chat that public schools are no longer able to accommodate washing in-house. So yeah, washing as a service is likely going to be the way to serve schools. And that's not, I mean, it would be lovely if schools could have their own washing, but if they can't, which is the reality, then being able to use a community washing facility is one way to address that.
It can be really beneficial for the system as a whole too, from, you know, especially in the early days as it's ramping up, to have that kind of consistent volume in the system. They can act as anchor points in the system where you really have established volume and flows, and that gives some financial stability to the system. And so I think the luxury of setting up from the beginning with a good deal of insight around volumes and how different institutions and other players will think about participating in the system. Again, it's a real value to be able to design from the very beginning to accommodate what we know to be true in the community.
Mm-hmm. If there's no other comments on washing at this moment, and please feel free to continue adding them to the chat, Dagny, I might direct you to move on to logistics, which I believe is just next door.
Wonderful. I think our steady driver, is that Andy that's driving there?
Yeah, so we'll go logistics and then we will go to labor after that.
So I think we had a bit of a maybe we had a conversation here, or I could be conflating it with another, had many logistics conversations lately. Generally, the logistics is the aspect of the system in which the clean assets are delivered to all of the participants. And the dirty assets, containers, are collected from all of the various locations that everyone just pointed out on the map. And not only those collection bins that we're looking at putting in public space or making sure are at post offices or bus stations, but obviously also from the businesses and institutions that are using the assets themselves. As you have seen with the map a little bit, a big important part of the planning of the logistics has to do with making sure we have the data right. And that includes not only working with DSI to help us take everything we learned from you and all the data we can collect out in the digital world to put that in to help us understand some of the most efficient routing that we can do, but also then take that data that we've gotten about everything and also work with the University of Michigan to do our life cycle assessment. So a big portion of the work up front around logistics is really understanding how to make sure we're making it the most environmentally and economically viable system. And the logistics have a heavy part of their weight in the environment side of things. And so there's a lot of different ways we think about it. It can be spoke and hub models where you think of the hub being maybe the washing facility, and then different sort of denser areas, or maybe sort of the outcrop areas. We're talking about clusters of areas where we know we think about sending out either EV vans. Maybe it makes sense in some particular areas, which I think this is a question that will come down to some of the modeling is, does it make sense to have sort of the cargo bike model here? Is there enough density to do that? Or does it make sense to, have an electric van that goes to the dense areas, and then there's a hand cart that really services the denser areas? So I think those are things that we will hope to be able to gain a lot of insight from based on this exercise we've done with everyone around the mapping of we think things need to be, and some of the data we get back. Questions on what else happens in logistics? And I don't know, I can't see if there is a decision point. I don't think we had a decision on the table for logistics particularly. The logistics, it's kind of like form follows the function, function follows form, one or the other. Once the systems gets designed, the components of your input, the logistics kind of speak for themselves to a certain extent.
Yeah, and as with many aspects of the system, the entity running this part of the system will have a lot. Which exact vehicles get used, for example, may depend on what existing vehicles they're already using that can be piggybacked on. It might include these tour buses, things like that. So there's really what we're trying to do here is set the requirements of the system in terms of efficiency, environmental viability, and economic viability. And then the service provider who comes in is, meets those requirements in whatever way, they're best able to. So.
I will add, I mean, just along with some of the work that I think we can all do together is understanding better what are those bus routes, what are the possibilities there, so we can seed the opportunity in a lot of different ways to make the best use of the community assets that already exist.
Well said. All right, let's go to labor, and then we'll wrap it up quickly with surge events and governance.
Okay, labor?
Yes.
So this is, I spoke to it a little bit in the washing, the opportunities that are created for those folks who are coming in. There are many different layers. So there's a overall management of the system, looking at how making sure that whatever operators, local operators, whoever fills the different roles, whether that's the logistics or the washing, etc. There are jobs created everywhere from management, like I said, down to really entry-level jobs. In terms of the number of jobs, I don't know if we have a number at this point, Ellie, of what we think the potential number of jobs were. I think I saw it somewhere at some point.
It's on the
but we
order
can
of
round
20 to
back to
30,
that.
but I don't, yeah, I think we can revert to that, but it's tens, you know, 5s to 10s of jobs probably.
The idea really, obviously, is that this should also benefit the local community and its capacity building overall. And so we would look to, I think, lean on this group to decide the best way to identify the labor once we understand the different players who are coming in to operate different components of the system. There may be organizations that you all want to work with or others for different, for the hiring process even.
Any comments or questions on labor? Yes, Going Home Hawaii, we have been in touch with them, and along with Arc of Hilo and a few others. And I definitely think that partnerships with those organizations could be really beneficial to everyone in this context. It's a great call out.
Yeah. I suppose I'll just finish by saying, I mean, the opportunity for new organizations to come into play, to play these roles, is obviously a total possibility as well.
Anything else on labor?
All right.
We might want to add one of the notes just to capture the thought of leveraging existing labor organizations to try and fulfill some of the needs, if not all of them. It could be partitioned.
And when you say labor organizations, are you talking about Going Home and others, or something else?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. I wanted to make sure that was not something else.
And the reason we've spoke about it in different contexts, not just in this design process, but others, that really checks a lot of the needs that we're trying to identify of getting to those underrepresented community, group members, as well as leveraging their expertise of navigating the local area for distribution and all the trials and tribulations of trying to operate those kind of systems in Hilo. They've got experience already doing those things.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thanks, TC. Spot on.
Mm-hmm. Then, Andy, you'll see we have a few other organizations to note. UHH, which is UH Hilo, American Job Center, and Goodwill can all be noted as labor organizations or partners that we can work with in this context. Okay. Let's head over to Surge Events, and then we'll wrap up governance.
So Surge Events are, I think that there's probably the largest surge event that I've been made aware of by our partners in Hilo is around 2,000 people, a festival that takes place. Please let me know, Jennifer, Ellen, Hule, anyone, if that's incorrect. I think when we think about surge events, we think about anything like that, where you suddenly have a huge swell in the population for either an event or, as we know, I think this falls a little bit outside of events because it's so consistent, but Hilo's constantly having mini surge events when the cruise ships arise. And so we just want to make sure that our planning is accommodating and for planning for the knowledge that there's going to be an added pressure on the system. And so it requires not only to make sure that there's adequate assets or containers in the system, but that there's also a staffing plan for the washing and the logistics, et cetera, that are all going to come under a certain amount of pressure during surge events. In the big picture, I think that surge events are a very minor part, and I don't mean that it's not to be considered, but some of the surge events we look at contending with are like 100,000. And so just from a scale perspective.
You broke up there just for a second, so we didn't hear the number. Could you say the number again?
Oh, talk about 100,000 additional people in a day in a single location. So I think not to diminish the surge, but the scale of the surge isn't something that I think gives us too much pause, but it definitely needs to be part of the planning process so that we make sure that we're accommodating those surges when they do happen.
So yeah, when you have a festival that's bringing 100,000 people to the island, that might cause different. Oh, here, Ellen, you have a comment here. World Sprints will have 4,000 plus people. So that's another great event to call out.
Yep.
Thank you.
August. Okay. Excellent.
Yeah. All right. Well, I know we're coming up on.
Before we go.
Oh, sorry, TC, I didn't see you. Go ahead.
That's okay. If it helps some folks kind of wrap their head around this, at least for Hilo, in the short time I've been here, it seems like the surge events may be accommodated to a large degree by just dealing with the individual business members. So the cooperating entities, such for the tourists, or I should say the cruise ships and most of the general tourist traffic is going to be handled through what the expectations of any particular food vendor is requesting for their volume of containers being delivered. Yeah. It's only when you get to like the Merry Monarch Festival or the World Sprints, or some other kind of standalone event that there would be that additional surge of need at that point in time. And that's where that outreach coordination position really comes into play to make sure that all of the current orders are being fulfilled along with whatever that surge would be. So I'll just second that it's probably relatively minor on an ongoing basis to what the system would need to accommodate, but it's extremely real when you've got a 4,000 person event on the same week that you've got 2 cruise ships coming in and all your vendors are expecting to have, an extra, 100 containers each, which adds up very quickly.
Absolutely. Totally critical. Thank you. Yeah, TC, absolutely.
We have 2 more additions in the chat. Craig, thank you for calling out the UH Hilo and HCC graduations, which happen twice a year. So that's definitely something we don't have on the radar. And then Councilman Kajiwara said events that have multiple food trucks are in areas that would maybe be outside of the typical range. So food trucks, which I absolutely hope that we can get food trucks participating. I think they're an ideal candidate for something like this because they absolutely don't have access to washing, no matter how much we would like them to. So yeah, they're definitely a group we'd like to work with. So thank you for those call outs. That's both really helpful. This is great. So Andy, once you've captured that, I'm happy to I'll take the first stab at governance, Dagny, and then I'll let you add what I may miss in talking this through. So governance is how we ensure that the system is well managed over time and continues to be responsive to community feedback and to what is being learned. So we want to make sure that we take the time now to establish an appropriate model of governance so that this type of input and feedback and these types of changes can continue for many years while the system operates successfully. We think about the different types of things that have to happen from a governance perspective in 3 categories. And actually, Andy, if you don't mind scrolling down just a little bit so we can see what's underneath the different role boxes here. So counties roles, reuse system management roles, and then reuse service provider roles. This is kind of a relatively simple way of framing this up, but I think it's helpful to think about all the different things that have to happen in the context of system oversight and governance. And then this is part of what is being figured out at this moment. And I think we're certainly happy to have feedback on it at this moment. And, you know, the county has certain things that will have to be them, you know, that they're given the funding flowing through the federal government and some of the other governance and sort of where authority flows in the system, the county will have to do certain things. And then there are certain things that other players can do in collaboration with the county or distinct from the county. So in the kind of bucket around what the county is responsible for, they have unique opportunities to apply for funding and to receive that funding to support the system. Obviously, this is an area that Perpetual and Zero Waste Hawaii Island and others can be involved in and supportive of, but ultimately the county has unique roles and responsibilities related to federal grants. The county can certainly provide regulatory and compliance oversight of the reuse system, and we expect and hope that that will happen. We do see it as a role of the county to ensure the reuse system is responsive to community needs over time, but how exactly that happens could take different forms. So it may be that the county itself is receiving feedback and managing those kinds of updates and adaptations, or it may be that there's another organization that is facilitating that process. The county will be responsible for running the RFP process to distribute grant funding because that's how that has to happen. And depending on what other roles the county has, they may have direct or indirect responsibilities for ensuring the success of the program over time. There may be additional things that aren't listed there, but I think that's a good start at what the county kind of has to do and as part of the system gets to do, maybe I should say. I don't know how people feel about that, but I think the reuse system management is a whole set of activities that can be done by a government entity, or could be contracted to another entity, whether a nonprofit or a for-profit. And these are all the things around ensuring the system is coordinated, efficient, responsive to service problems as they might occur, all of these things that we know happen operationally that need to be managed. Things like getting businesses enrolled, managing the billing functions, how are people getting paid, how are people, you know, supplying their new order requirements, all of those kinds of things. So there is a reuse system management role. Some government, some cities and governments may wish to play this role themselves. Others will be very happy to contract it out to another entity or to authorize another entity to play this role on their behalf, whether it's a direct contract or a different legal structure. We don't have to worry about right now, but basically sort of with the county's blessing, another entity would play these roles, or the county could choose to do it themselves. This is something, again, that's sort of being figured out. And as Jen has put in the chat, there's, you know, different entities within the county that could have different responsibilities within these different boxes. The reuse service providers ultimately are the folks that operate the system. They're the ones that are making it all happen, and they will rely on this management role for coordination for, you know, various types of operational efficiency and direction. And if, not to sort of blend the boxes here too much, but it is possible that the entity that does reuse system management would also play other roles in the system. So you could have a washing provider that is also playing the reuse system management role, or another, you know, other pieces of it. We hold them distinct on this page just because the management piece is such a unique piece, and the other pieces are a little bit easier to parse out from one another, but there's no reason you couldn't have one entity that does all of it, or you could have different entities playing each of these roles, and then contractually the way that they work together is just worked out in the details for coordination. So hopefully I haven't made that sound extra complicated. Dagny, do you want to translate anything I've said or provide any additional nuance or thoughts?
I think you did an excellent job. I think the one part I didn't hear totally at the end, if you said, you know, from the reuse service provider position, you know, this could be a number of providers, or it could plausibly be one organization that played the role of all of these different parts, depending on how the design comes in at the end, which I think then influences what that management role looks like a little bit. I think obviously if you have one provider, then you're only theoretically managing one organization, but the likelihood of that is quite low, that any one provider would have all those capacities. So I think it is, I would just add that the reuse service providers, while they are doing all the actual everyday on the ground labor, there is that management component shouldn't be underestimated.
So this is a chance. Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. I may have said it, but thank you for reinforcing it because I think it's important that that be said out loud. Any comments, thoughts? Thank you for the connection to Oscar in the chat. Any other reflections, thoughts on kind of what we need to keep in mind as these governance decisions get fleshed out further before going into the draft system design plan?
I want to say this is really, really, really exciting. This is awesome. I'm super excited at this point. More so than usual. More so than usual.
Oh, it's, you know, this starts to get really real. So I'm glad that you find that exciting instead of terrifying. It can be a bit of both. And TC, you say in the chat, initially the county would be the entity all the contracts would be going through for service providers. Most likely, though, the county actually has a decision when they put the RFP together as to how they want to structure that. So they can structure it as a contract, or they can structure it as a, not as a contract, but as a different kind of, like almost just as a grant, you know, with specific objectives. So I think that's a little bit of a TBD, but the county, because they're holding the money, has a lot of influence over the initial set of disbursements of those funds and what the kind of expectations are that goes with those funds. So I hope that yes is the short answer to what you're saying. Other questions or comments on this? This is where lawyers start to get really helpful. I don't know that we have any on the call right now. So TC, thank you for your additional comment. Yeah, make sure everyone understands the initial requirement. So yeah, initially, and I actually think it's really, what is nice about having this initial funding passing through the county is that it, as a result, it's sort of required to, it has to fulfill a lot of the expectations on the federal grant side of things, which ensure fairness and transparency and all of that, which of course is what we'd want anyway, but we have to do it that way, which I'm happy for. And it does allow the county to play a really strong coordinating role to get this off the ground so that we don't have kind of a lot of messy different things happening. So I think there's some real cleanness about having it come through a single entity. And assuming there's a fair and transparent process, then I think that still creates a lot of opportunity for everyone who wants to be involved. And Councilwoman Kajiwara, thank you for indicating that you think the county will be looking for some recommendations. It's probably helpful to say, you know, one of the roles that Perpetual is able to play is helping write the RFP based on the system design. So once we have the system design, which outlines the requirements and the considerations, Perpetual translate that into the RFP, which includes a scoring system and, you know, how, and that helps us figure out who are the best providers that are going to meet the needs of this system at this time. And this group will continue, I'm sure, to be really important in making those recommendations. Any other questions or comments on governance at this moment? I know this has been a lot on this call. Looks like we still have almost everyone with us. So thank you for sticking it out. And I want to preview, I know we may not get everyone back in 2 weeks, but we will be revisiting the topics that we haven't been able to really close out in 2 weeks and be able to share additional data. I actually would love to take this moment to acknowledge Hannah and her counterpart who are helping with a lot of very important but very exhausting data collection work. So thank you so much, Hannah, for doing that in support of this effort, along with a few others. And so we'll be able to bring that data as well as some other data. Councilman Kajiwara, if you're able to help us with some of the other data that came up on this call, I think we can bring that into this process. And we'll definitely have some revisions on the map as well to be able to share, and potentially even some initial routing calculations to provide some reality check on what does it mean to have 150 bins versus 300 versus 10. So I hope we'll see you all again in 2 weeks. We'll make sure to send out the pre-read materials at least a few days ahead of time so we can get our heads around it. And I think I am done talking, so I'm going to hand it back to Kule to wrap us up.
Yes, I'm very thankful to each of you for hanging in there through this process from the beginning to where we are now. It's very exciting to see the different mana'o that are coming through. I'm really grateful that folks are not hesitant to share their truthful responses and their truthful ideas and their truthful doubts when it comes to the system. Like I said before in a previous conversation, even though some folks are not interested in shooting holes in our planning, it's important that we have an opportunity to patch those before we go out into the larger community. So just mahalo to each of you, and I hope to keep in touch as we go forward. To those of you who won't be able to join us in March, I'm going to put my cell number here. And I'm easily accessible if you just call or text to stay in touch in any way. You can also reach me via email at this email address or on Instagram at ZeroWasteHI. That's our Instagram for the project. So just grateful. I don't have anything else to share with you folks, but except there's a comment here in the chat. I may have said March 6th, but 2 weeks from today is actually March 7th. So we're hoping to meet again on March 7th. If you know anyone that would be interested in kind of hearing back about the system design plan and where we'll be at by then, please let them know. Autumn, will you send out a follow-up email with, because it won't be the same link as this series of meetings, right? It'll be a different registration process for that last meeting.
It's the same registration process, yeah. So you should be able to use the same link, but it doesn't hurt to go through the registration again, and the meeting for the 7th was added.
Okay, awesome. So it will be the same. Does anybody have any closing mana'o or any thoughts to share before we close up until a couple weeks from now?
I have a question. Autumn, on the people who registered for next week, will there be an automatic note sent to them that it's canceled and that there will instead be March 7th? Is there an automatic note?
So this
Just
was
in
the
case.
last week that we had scheduled. So the only update was that I added the meeting on the 7th.
That's right. That's right. I'm sorry. I forgot about that. Oh, I'm just so excited to keep going here.
I wanted to just raise something because I think we have people here that might give us good insight. So after the next stages after we finish these meetings is we'll be having a community meeting to get public input and feedback from draft 1, and then we'll do that again once we have a draft 2 after that. But since we have some county folks here, we were kind of trying to figure out what would be the best time to hold that public meeting to get greater participation. So we were thinking either a Saturday or an evening after work time. So I don't know, Jen, if you have some thoughts.
Yeah, so I guess it depends who you're trying to get to participate. If you want businesses that are like food establishments, restaurants, you know, you don't want to do the dinner rush or something. That would be the normal time when we would do probably a community meeting. But given who you may want to be attracting to this meeting, I think it may be a little different. So then, yeah, going to a weekend might be better. But also, once again, being aware of the kind of rush times, the most busiest times for restaurants and food establishments, things like that.
Mahalo for that insight.
Yeah.
Can
Your
you
Monday
repeat-
morning. Sorry, Chikule.
No. Jen, I'm sorry. Can you say your name for me?
Sure, it's Kagiwara.
Oh, Kagiwara. Okay, I was wanting to make sure that I was saying it correctly.
Thank you.
And then I have a hard time with, because I asked Jen in the chat and she was saying she spelled it out for me in the way that you would spell it out in English, and I still wasn't able to.
Sorry.
I was like, listen.
Just trying to phonetically do it, but yeah.
Awesome. Thanks for clarifying.
Sure.
Yeah, does anybody else have any other manaon when because we want people to come, and my idea was that if we do like some kind of la ohana on a Saturday, for where there's something for keiki on the side or something like something fun for them, then maybe it would be good to do on a Saturday so that the keiki could be occupied and we could have time with their ohana. But I recognize that this is kind of more of a formal kind of public hearing type of event that we're hoping to put on. So maybe it would be more appropriate to do in the evenings. Does anybody from the Perpetual or Zero Waste Hawaii Island team have some insight on who will want to attend these public hearings or these meetings?
I'm not sure if it makes sense to do 2 again. It may not, or it might, if there's a day that's going to make more sense for the business community to really take a look and have a facilitated look through it rather than just send it to them and ask for feedback. Might want to consider like a business review and then a public community review.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think if you target business people and say this is a particular meeting that's just for you, you might get better turnout from folks than just a general meeting.
Awesome, that's helpful. That's helpful. There's another question in the chat. How best to get a hold of stainless clamshells?
I'd like to get a hold of various ones that are possible, not only for myself to get my hands on, but to share those with, you know, possible establishments that are going to use them and practice and see and get them out there for people to test out and see what works best, and, you know, even clean them ourselves and provide them back to different places when we order out, just so, you know, I can wrap my head and they can wrap their heads around exactly what this is that we're going to get done. And I'll pay for them. I don't mind paying for them.
I think that's been a conversation that's been in play already a little bit. I haven't been at internal meetings, so I think that you're spot on in that desire.
Yeah, Kool-Aid and Tiff had surfaced that as well, that we need to order a bunch and be able to, people can use them and try them out and hold them, you know, wash them, see how they work. So that's yes, that is absolutely something we'll be doing.
So what are the next steps for that? Because I think Troy's asking about ordering some now.
Well, I guess if you would like to order some yourself, we can provide you with links of the ones that we would recommend. And or the Zero Waste Hawaii Island team is going to order some to work with at community meetings. And so if you want to borrow those, then that would also be an option. But we're happy to, I think we're still in the process of choosing the ones that it makes the most sense to order and sort of the amounts that make sense. So can we loop you into that conversation and see what best meets your needs? Awesome.
Are you interested in just trying out a system like because there's easily a way that you could go online and order some now, you know? Are you just asking for the link, or are you asking for the ones that we were actually considering to use?
I think the ones that were really in front of the line to use are the ones we want to practice with.
Yeah,
Whether that be
agreed.
classic or stainless or whatever it is, you know, and get some feedback and again, be able to put my own hands on it, and then I would have a better feeling for what this is going to look like.
Yes,
I'd really agree with that as well. We certainly don't want to put ones out that aren't totally infeasible, and then people really like them, but they don't work at scale or something. So I think that's smart, Troy. Yeah, I would agree.
I really love it. Makes sense to me that there's that sense of urgency of like, why can't we just try it now? Like, just let us try. Like, just let us try it. Even if we're just having to do it with our own people, like our own community, just let us try it.
I agree.
Yeah.
And like you said, Kool-Aid, there's places that we order out from every week.
Yeah.
And they would gladly take the same 12 clamshells that we wash every time. And, you know, yeah, you got to go over there beforehand and give it back to them. But That's no big deal.
Yeah.
That'd
yeah,
be excellent practice.
Yeah,
Mm,
I agree. I agree. I love that
excellent.
model. Okay, cool. I love this. Just getting into it. Anybody else? Are you clapping or are you raising your hand, Ellen?
Clapping. Yeah.
Yay!
Go get and I've been taking my Cow tin too, my 3-level Cow tin, and it really is a conversation starter. You
Yeah.
know, people asking about it, and I go, yeah, you can put your rice in here, your entree in here, and then your dessert in the other one, you know. So good, Troy. Great idea.
Awesome. Awesome team. Mahalo piha. I look forward to seeing you folks again, and I hope that you keep in touch throughout this process, and also for regular things that have to do anything, that have anything to do with our values. I hope that you keep in touch with us about how we can support you folks in any of those things and how we can share with our contacts about information or services or upcoming events that you folks have in your own communities. Let's just keep in touch as we go forward. So mahalo to each of you, and we'll be in touch. Aloha nui.
Mahalo no.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah.
Thanks so much.
Aloha.